Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for another video. Now this one is going to be a very big build. Now I have recently watched season 3 of Bridgerton. I don't know if anyone else has, but I've been waiting a long time for it and I got inspired by some of the kind of sets and different looks when I was watching the show. I was watching it and I was like halfway through an episode and I was like, I want to build something like this. It's so random, so like out of what I usually am building. I don't usually do these kind of like royal kind of setups in my valley, but I really wanted to do something that kind of was inspired by that. We have a lot in the game that I felt like could be utilized really well to create something like this. So it is a very big build. It does take over my whole forest. It will not be staying here as a permanent fixture, but as my forest was empty, I decided it was the perfect time to do this. So I create two different sections. One of them is like a kind of party kind of area. I will put shots from the actual show in between to kind of show you what I was referencing, and then there is the other section that is referencing a specific scene in season 3. So let's get started. So first I started off by using the haunted mansion house as well as some of the Disney parks entrances that we have. These are just like the perfect buildings that we have in game to kind of fit this old school kind of Regency look. We don't really have much else that would fit this, so I kind of arranged those all around, and as you can see I started placing out all the furniture I knew I was going to be using. So I was obviously going to use the topiaries, a lot of fountains, a lot of kind of the royal things, and then I started using some of the hedges that we recently got in the Alice bundle to kind of build a border. As soon as we got this bundle, I knew I was going to be able to do so much with all of these hedges. They're just such a good way to decorate, and I felt like this just fit perfectly for the theme of what I was building today. So I started by going around and kind of figuring out my layout, what I wanted to use to kind of create the border and figure out the overall general kind of places I wanted everything to be located in the biome. As you can see, there was a lot of furniture that I thought I was potentially going to be using. I kind of placed it all in a corner and then realized how much stuff I'd actually put out. So as you can see, this build is very, very busy, and I do kind of have to utilize all the different things I have got. So it does look a bit kind of manic right now and there's a lot of stuff out. But as I go through and kind of sample in the build and kind of figure out where things are going, I slowly whittle down the amount of furniture I used. But it is one that has got quite a lot of furniture in, as I wanted it to kind of have this royal feel. So I wanted to use a lot of the different kind of royal structures we have in game, and then I went in and used some of the bordered asphalt paving to create this really nice kind of like pebbly pathway. I was going to do it with the really nice kind of like royal white gem pathway we have. However, when I watched the actual show and I looked at kind of the setup that they had in the garden that I was kind of replicating, they had kind of this exact pathway. So I decided to use those, and I placed some of the Cinderella carriages near the front of the biome to kind of represent where they would get picked up and go home in their carriages. And so I continued the pathway all around and figured out the layout of how I wanted it to look whilst extending the hedge walls. So once I'd mapped out the first like main section, I then moved on to the smaller section, which is where I'm going to create our kind of hot balloon fair ride area. So I wanted to base this, obviously, if you've seen season 3, there is a scene where there is a hot air balloon and a kind of like fair with festivities and things like that. That has kind of a scene in the show in one of the episodes. Now, I felt like this would be such a cool one to recreate because it would be such a simple little area. I'd be able to utilize some of the really like old school looking furniture pieces that we have, especially the ones from the new Star Path, and I could use the up balloons to kind of reference the hot air balloon. Obviously, I know it's not a hot air balloon, but it is close enough. It is close enough to represent it. So I put some of the furniture items in that I knew I was going to be using, and then I started again using the hedges from the Alice bundle to go around the outer edge and kind of block in exactly where I wanted this build to kind of expand to in this section. Now, once I kind of blocked that in, I returned it back to this main area and started figuring out kind of our banquet area, which is essentially what was going to go in this back section of the main area of the forest. So I wanted to create just this really kind of like hidden nook section where you would have lots of banquet tables, a seating area, some musical area to kind of reference where people that are hanging out in this kind of area would eat and enjoy and chat and gossip. So that is what I'm creating here. So again, I use the hedges to kind of block out the area. I felt like these just worked so well throughout the whole build to be able to do this, and figured out where I wanted the pathways to extend to, how I wanted to kind of structure everything out, and moved around all the furniture that was in here to try and kind of figure out what I wanted to use. Now once I'd done the main kind of hedge outline, I then knew that on this kind of back wall section I wanted to create kind of like banquet tables with lots of kind of fine ware and silverware and things like that kind of dotted around. So I used some of the regal desks we have, the Cinderella ones, to place and make this kind of back wall structure, and some of the candelabras, which were from the Ultimate Edition, to kind of light up behind, and then use some of the fountains we got in the previous star path to kind of just give it this really nice royal aspect. I then covered the whole ground in the same paving. I wanted it all to be kind of paved over, and then figured out how I was going to rearrange these back tables to kind of display things to people but still keep a very kind of like clean and simple royal look before I go in and rearrange all of this mass furniture that is on the floor. As you can see, there is a lot here, so I do go through it all and kind of remove the things I know I probably won't end up using and rearrange the things that I want to use. There was a lot of things in here that I knew definitely I wanted to include, so I just figured out the best way to structure them and how to kind of utilize them in the area so it really looked like an actual kind of area that people would be using. Now once I'd rearranged the majority of the furniture, I then kind of placed my little table areas out. So I wanted to have some of these Now I want to have some of these larger tables in here, and I decorated them with some of the springtime cutlery sets we got with the Easter event, and also some flowers and just a few like chalices and things like that, just to give it this look as though people would sit there and kind of enjoy a drink and chat together. I also placed in the popcorn machine from the Bell bundle just because it fits so perfectly in here and matches the little tea trolleys. I felt like the tea trolleys just bring such a nice element to this, and I created a music area over in the left hand corner, which included some harps and a grand piano, which I felt like was just the perfect place to kind of imagine there would be like an orchestra or a quartet here. And I then kind of figured out how I wanted to structure all the kind of foliage around here. Obviously, as it is a very built up area with a lot of pathway, there are these smaller sections that we can use a lot of foliage. So I wanted to keep it as consistent and kind of structured as possible. I wanted it to feel like these are gardens that are looked after and have a very specific look to them. So they were very structured in that way. And I wanted to create kind of nice borders using a lot of the floral bushes and flowers that we had, as well as some of the furniture flower beds. These were perfect to use throughout the whole build because they really just fit the look of the whole biome and make it just seem very, very structured, but also bring a really nice floral pop of colour. Continuing on the foliage, I went into the kind of like main gardens area and put in some flower beds as well as lots of the same structured foliage throughout here. I wanted to kind of keep it in the same pattern and design as I'd had around the rest of the biome. I just wanted this all to look like it was a very consistent, kind of well thought out area that was looked after and kind of had this really royal structure to it. I also rearranged some of the paving and the fountains just to make sure everything kind of looks as symmetrical as possible, but also allowed you to actually walk around it and be a realistic biome to kind of function in. And I added just some bits of grass throughout to just give it a bit more texture and a bit more structure before continuing with a lot of foliage and kind of finishing this section off before moving on to the next. So now we head back to this kind of hot balloon area, which I did kind of start to border and then quickly got distracted by something else. So I went back in and continued this border. Now, obviously I wanted to block off the ice cave, as obviously this isn't going to be a functioning biome. It's not going to stay like this forever. So it didn't really matter to me that I blocked that off. And obviously it doesn't really fit the theme of this area. So I did my best to kind of use the hedges to block off those areas that I didn't feel like were useful in the build itself. I then added lots of bushes around the sort of topiary mazes just to give this really nice structure and create the balloons as the focal point of the build before I then kind of figured out where the rest of the layouts, everything was going to go. I kind of wanted to figure out a little food court area as well as a little seating area, and then I do include the little kind of comfy cushion mat that we got with the Belle bundle, as it reminded me of the one that is actually in the scene. If you've seen it, you will know, but I would include a picture here. But it kind of just was to represent that and gave it this kind of nice little royal area. But I wanted to figure out the best way to structure this so that the balloons remained the focal point, but you could also kind of move around and see everything else the biome had to offer. Now throughout the build I decided, as I said before, to do a little like food court area on the left hand side, which included like the new pretzel stand and the ice cream stand, just because they felt so old school and just really fit in here to be kind of like a little fair stand they would go to and they would visit. And then on the right hand side I did this kind of like recreational area with some tables to sit at, some stalls to purchase things from, and then a kind of like little hidden area where we have the picnic blanket under the gazebo. I then went in and added in a lot of flower beds. I wanted it in here to just have a really nice structure of a lot of bright flowers, as well as lots of bushes kind of lining around the edges of the maze and around the edge of the hedges. And I then extended the pathway throughout both of these left and right hand side courts. I wanted it to feel kind of structured but still have a lot of greenery kind of hidden behind where the balloon is, but I knew keeping the pathways underneath these kind of like recreational areas just really fit well in here, and it kind of broke up all of the greenery. So I did that, and then I kind of figured out how I wanted to rearrange things to kind of display them as best I could. So this is the finished build. I will walk you through kind of the romantic garden. So as we come in from the plaza, we have obviously our carriages on the left to kind of symbolize the ones you would have had around this time. Obviously we only have these ones that are kind of similar, but I put one of the ancient trees in the middle just to give it this really nice kind of whimsical look. I've got the little seating areas on the right and some berry bushes, and then we go through and we can kind of see the entrance into the kind of food court area. There's actually two entrances into here. There's the one through the kind of Disney park entrance building, and there's also the other one through the archway. I just felt like it gave nice kind of loop round to be able to see everything. And obviously, as you can see in here, it's very bright. There are a lot of tables with really beautiful kind of bright decorations on them, a lot of flowers, a lot of greenery. On the tables at the back we have a lot of silverware and candlelight, as well as our little musical area in the corner with the grand piano and the harps. And in here I just really love it. I think it's a nice little hidden area, and the hedges work so well to kind of break it up from the rest of this. As we carry on through here, we can obviously see we are leading into our entrance of kind of our main courtyard area, which again has some benches outside, some fountains, and a lot of flowers. Obviously these flowers were perfect. It's a shame they are black, but they are the most similar I could get to the ones I'd actually seen in kind of the example photos of what I was working from. So they did work really well in here. And in this main courtyard we obviously have our mazes. Again, lots of lots of fountains, some clocks, some of the banner lampposts that are craftable, and I just wanted this to feel really structured, really royal in here, and I feel like it worked really well to kind of just be this second section where it definitely feels more like somewhere you would come to just walk along and chat, or you'd come and enjoy the view rather than kind of hang out with lots of other people. This is more of a kind of quiet area where you would take in your surroundings and enjoy the look of it. I obviously use the Haunted Mansion house to be kind of the main focus point of this because it's the main house we have that kind of works for this structure, and then use some of the Disney park entrances to kind of block out the background of it and make it seem like a bigger building than it actually is. Now, as we head through the floor archways across the bridge, we have our kind of fair area with the kind of balloon as the main structure, obviously the hot air balloons. Then we have obviously all the greenery around the back, again some more hedge mazes. We have our little gazebo with the picnic blanket under it and the little recreational area. And on the left we have the kind of like little food court area. I really loved being able to utilize some of these new things from the Star Path as they're quite old school looking, and I just felt like they worked really well in here. Obviously they're not quite accurate to the era of the build, however I felt like they were old school enough to kind of fit the atmosphere of what I was going for. So I really enjoyed using those, and on top of those I did include like some teapots and some foods and cakes and things like that. I also added lots of balloons around the build just to kind of tie it all together and make it seem like this nice kind of fair area. And on the recreational area we have some little seating areas with lots of tea and biscuits on the tables. We have the stalls with the different goods on display, and then our little picnic area in the back. Now here are some shots of the final build. I did take quite a lot of pictures because it is such a big build and it did take me such a long time to do, so I kind of wanted to make sure I got all the different areas in some photos so you could kind of see it from different angles. Now I really love how this turned out. I feel like I just kind of had the inspiration sort of spontaneously and just decided to go with it, and it did take me quite a while to complete, and it took me a while to figure out the structure of what I wanted to include. I do really love how it turned out though. I feel like I managed to include all the different areas that I wanted to, and I really love this little fair area on the other side, and just it brings such a nice pop of colour in here. Now as I said, this isn't going to be a permanent fixture in my forest. It's not going to be how my forest is going to look, so at some point I will take this down, but I probably will leave it for a good while, as long as I can, because I am really enjoying kind of looking at it and being able to see it in action, and hopefully I can use it for some dream snaps going forward. I hope you guys enjoyed the build and you like this kind of like royal garden look that I went for. Obviously let me know down below if you did, and if you are looking for anything particular on the channel, I'm always open to suggestions of what you guys want to see. I hope to see you all in the next one. Have a lovely week and I appreciate all the support. Bye!